Missile after missile, going higher and farther in North Korea. Some say North Korea is thumbing its nose at the world. A retired four-star general who led the Air Force in Desert Storm says, enough.
We need to let this guy get a capability to attack U.S. cities, or we can stop that program.
In an exclusive interview with KGW, General Tony McPeak calls for action against North Korea.
Waiting and watching are not options.
We've waited. We've watched. It's time to operate.
Could North Korean missiles target cities on the West Coast? What about its nuclear capabilities? Those answers aren't clear, but one thing is, U.S. interests are within range.
Kim Jong-un is clearly in a position to threaten Hawaii today, in my opinion.
What are the options for the United States?
I would not say there's an easy ultimatum military option here.
But it's the last option left, according to General McPeak, who admits a U.S. attack would be devastating and costly.
Seoul will come under attack from the first minutes of any military action we take, and that's not good.
Tonight, reaction from current and former Oregon lawmakers.
We cannot save a rattle, and we cannot pretend that saying we would attack another country wouldn't lead to an escalation that could destroy the world.
This administration is going to push the Chinese very hard.
President Donald Trump saying that a major conflict with North Korea is a possibility.
North Korea is a big world problem. It's a problem we have to finally solve.
A respected military mind takes a provocative stand. General Tony McPeak calls North Korea the most deeply troubling threat today. Others call his comments irresponsible. The question of North Korea, next on KGW.
Welcome back. I recently wrote an article about the current situation in North Korea. Before I posted it, I thought I would run it by retired General Tony McPeak. He lives in Portland and served as our KGW military analyst for years. The general's resume is long and impressive, but he's perhaps best known as the man who commanded the U.S. Air Force during the Gulf War. I was not expecting to hear what he had to say. A man who's always been direct but measured was calling for military action in North Korea. We need to give them an ultimatum, he told me. And if they won't dismantle their nuclear program, we'll dismantle it for them. If you haven't spent much time thinking about North Korea, now is a good time to start, which is why we're bringing you this program tonight. We'll have our exclusive interview with General McPeak, and our team of journalists here at KGW will explore several perspectives on his comments and the problems a world away that by some standards could threaten the U.S. West Coast soon. These are serious issues with different options and varied opinions, and we will have those as well, including conversations with former Congresswoman Elizabeth First and Oregon's current senators. But we start with a look at where we are today. In fact, just this afternoon, the U.S. conducted a test and successfully intercepted an intercontinental ballistic missile. This is the ground-based Interceptor, lifting off from Vandenberg Air Force Base in California at 12:30 our time today. About an hour later, the Pentagon says it successfully collided with an ICBM target that had been fired from the Marshall Islands 4,200 miles away. U.S. officials say today's test had been planned for years, but many see it as a direct response to one of several missiles North Korea has tested, the latest 2 days ago. For a timeline of the stories leading up to this, I'm joined now by KGW investigative reporter Kylie Boshi. And Kyle, this situation is developing by the day.
Joe, North Korea's growing nuclear and missile threat is seen as a major security challenge for the United States. President Trump has vowed to prevent the country from being able to hit the U.S. with a nuclear missile. But experts say North Korea could have that capability to reach the U.S. West Coast sometime after 2020.
With tensions already high, North Korea launched another missile on Monday. The short-range Scud-type missile flew nearly 250 miles before crashing in the Sea of Japan. Photos released by North Korean state media show leader Kim Jong-un overseeing this weekend's military exercise. The isolated country appears to be ever closer to being a nuclear threat to military bases in the Pacific, including Guam and potentially the U.S. West Coast.
So this could be a very serious crisis along the lines of the Cuban Missile Crisis, unless we do everything we can to restrain North Korean behavior.
On May 14th, North Korea launched what it called a new ballistic missile that can carry a large, heavy nuclear warhead. The test rocket landed in the sea near Russia. It was believed to have a longer range than any North Korean missile tested before, prompting angry comments from leaders in South Korea, Japan, and the U.S.
We're not going to continue to just say, go ahead and test as often as you want. This has become more than just a problem. This is a true threat to every country in the world.
North Korea is banned by the United Nations from nuclear and missile development, but the country's leader, Kim Jong-un, has ignored that. The country has conducted 2 nuclear tests and a string of missile launches since the start of last year. North Korea's arsenal is growing along with the pace of its tests.
Combining nuclear warheads with ballistic missile technology in the hands of a volatile leader like Kim Jong-un is a recipe for disaster.
The U.S. says its strategic patience with North Korea is over, even hinting at a preemptive strike. U.S. Defense Secretary Jim Mattis warns war with North Korea would be, quote, catastrophic. The North Korean regime has hundreds of artillery cannons and rocket launchers within range of Seoul, South Korea, one of the most densely populated cities on Earth. The U.S. hopes China will rein in North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. President Trump tweeting this weekend, North Korea has shown great disrespect for their neighbor China by shooting off yet another ballistic missile, but China is trying hard. The U.S. has threatened tougher sanctions, further isolating North Korea from the international community.
The United States will pursue an aggressive international diplomatic campaign to further isolate the regime in Pyongyang and calls on all countries concerned about North Korea's nuclear saber-rattling and flagrant violations of international law to join us in this effort.
With North Korea's nuclear missile threat in mind, the Pentagon prepared its own anti-missile launch. Today's test of the ground-based interceptor is intended to simulate and stop an intercontinental range missile fired by North Korea. So far, North Korea has yet to test such a missile. Experts say the country could still be years away from mastering the technology needed to build a reliable missile that could reach the U.S. West Coast.
And again this afternoon, the Pentagon confirmed the interceptor launched from California did destroy the target over the Pacific Ocean. The test was successful, but Washington Representative Adam Smith, the top Democrat on the House Armed Services Committee, cautioned there's still a lot of work to be done to make sure we have a reliable defense system. Joe?
Kyle, thanks. Retired 4-star General Tony McPeak has seen enough. He says it's time for the U.S. to act now. The general retired with a number of military accomplishments and honors. He worked with several presidents, ran the Air Force during Operation Desert Storm, and served on the Joint Chiefs of Staff. If this hasn't been on your radar, it will be after you hear what the general thinks we should do.
I believe we should have a orchestrated scenario leading to eventually military action.
Retired General Tony McPeak isn't the first person to bring up military action in North Korea as an option. But make no mistake, he is openly calling for it, saying we've waited too long already.
I think the government in North Korea has established itself as being pretty unpredictable, unstable. And I regard it as a very dangerous situation when unstable, unpredictable governments have nuclear weapons that can reach, in the case of Guam, U.S. territory.
The fact is, we don't know the exact capabilities of North Korea's nuclear and missile programs, but President Kim Jong-un has been more than willing to give the world a glimpse. In early May, the country tested a mid-range missile, and a week before that, it fired off a missile that flew higher and longer than any missile it had tested, and then bragged that missile could not only carry a heavy nuclear warhead, but could one day reach Hawaii and Alaska.
It should have been stopped some time ago, but now is as good a time as any. to stop it before they can attack Seattle and Portland and San Francisco and LA.
This hasn't exactly been on the front burner. Do you think it needs to be for citizens of the United States?
Yes.
It's that dire.
Well, it's the most deeply troubling threat that exists today. I mean, ISIS in the Middle East is a threat, but they're a threat to blow up airliners or do some marginal thing that will hurt. North Korea, armed with nuclear intercontinental missiles, is a threat, an existential threat to the United States, not a minor irritant. You know, this is a big league, world-class threat under development that needs to be stopped.
General McPeak favors an ultimatum with a short time limit and a clear message to North Korea. Dismantle your nuclear program now, or we'll dismantle it for you.
Were we to get serious about disarming North Korea, it would involve several target sets. One of them would be a sort of what's known as decapitation attack, where you try to take out key people and command and control structure. And then another target set would be the nuclear infrastructure that we can get to. And a lot of that's on the surface, and we could punch pretty big holes in that, take out that capability. And then a very important part of the target set would be the artillery, basically thousands of artillery pieces close to the DMZ.
Any military action comes with unknowns. Would North Korea use nuclear weapons in response? Would they invade South Korea? Would they launch everything they have at Seoul, Japan, and points beyond? One thing is clear. McPeak says Seoul, because of its unfortunate location near the DMZ, would come under direct and heavy fire within minutes of any U.S. military action.
The problem of Seoul is not really winnable. I mean, Seoul is likely to be massively damaged in any kind of a dust-up like this. And it's hard for me to see how that's avoided.
And here's how serious the general is. He favors that timeline so the 10 million people living in Seoul can evacuate. What are the chances, though, of getting China on board, South Korea on board, Russia on board for military action in North Korea?
These countries are all threatened more than we are. I mean, Japan's well within range of existing delivery capability. All of China is in the radius of action of this latest ICBM that was shot. South Korea's rationale is the easiest to understand. They will take they'll take a beating here. A lot of South Korean wealth will be burned up in this process. In the end, they all ought to be convinced that we can't allow a crazy, dictatorial, autocratic regime in the North to possess, a worldwide nuclear delivery capability.
If they can't be convinced, should the U.S. move forward unilaterally?
Yes.
No question.
Well, look, I believe in defending the United States. That's my interest. I think it's very worthwhile. You know, the people, the property, the institutions of the United States are worth defending. And if others join us in that enterprise, I welcome their cooperation. If they don't, then it's our interests that we need to protect here.
General McPeak knows what military action in Korea would look like. He used to command U.S. Air Forces in the Pacific. And while he was a key player in orchestrating the air attack in Operation Desert Storm, he was opposed to the Iraq War 12 years later.
Iraq, too, was posited on a set of assumptions that were obviously wrong at the time, I thought. And one of those assumptions was that Saddam Hussein possessed weapons of mass destruction capability that wasn't there. I thought it wasn't there. It said so at the time, wrote so. I mean, I'm on the record. Action now against North Korea would be based on valid, demonstrable, capabilities that we've seen. They're open. You know, everybody understands this. Everybody knows that the North Koreans have nuclear weapons because they've been tested. They caused an earthquake here a while back when they did their first, what they call thermonuclear test. Hard to judge whether it was really or not, but it was big. And we've seen them fire their rockets, so we know those capabilities are in place. That's different from Iraq too.
You told me a couple things that stood out about the Iraq War when you and I did similar interviews. You told me at the time we'd be there for 25 years, and that's becoming true. You told me also, if we break it, we own it. War in Korea would be a lot to own.
Sure would. Look, I don't want to underplay the importance here of urging that we take military action in the Korean Peninsula. If there's any other way to solve this problem, I'm delighted. Let's do it that way. But we've tried just about everything. Political pressure, economic pressure, diplomatic pressure. We've sealed off North Korea. I mean, there have been starvation, you know, in the North because of the poverty that we have been at least partly responsible for by the kinds of sanctions that we've put in place. None of that has stopped this program, this nuclear development program, from continuing apace in the North. So military action is what we have left.
You know the headline from this will be former Air Force commander supports military strike in North Korea.
Well, as I say, I don't think it's something we need to do by happy hour Friday, Joe. It's something we need to address systematically over a period of time, including the delivery of ultimatums that say, if not, then this. And the this is military action. And yes, I favor it. I would favor it in order to get this problem under control.
Does that not give the North Koreans 3, 6, 9 months to prepare for what they think is probably an attack that's coming anyway?
Yes, it does. Look, there's a lot of downside here. This won't be a surprise attack. It shouldn't be a surprise attack. In the scenario that I outlined, the surprise would be what hour, what minute, what day. Not that that such an attack is not coming, because we have to threaten such an attack in order to make everybody understand that we're serious about this.
I would imagine at this point, anyone who's been watching this closely would realize that North Korea is close enough that they're not going to give up or dismantle anything.
Right. It seems unlikely that they will stop voluntarily. And therefore, my expectation is that we will have to take military action. And the question is, how do you orchestrate that, put that together with all the diplomatic moves that you have to make and so forth. But I expect that this is a problem that can be solved only through military action.
Still ahead, the U.S. has been here before.
Well, I'm very pleased. I think the North Koreans cooperated adequately.
What former President Jimmy Carter told KGW after defusing a tense standoff with North Korea in 1994. A look back when we return, and a look forward. Hear from current and former Oregon lawmakers about U.S. options in North Korea today.
China's in a position to apply an enormous amount of pressure, but China has to decide that this is something that they're willing to do.